So he was out there trying to gather the cattle, to finish his chores. He just wanted to kind of get it over with, and he was hoping it wouldn't come back. And then, of course, it did. It just kind of like swooped back in, and it scared the animals. It scared the farmer. He took off running. Kind of reminded me of the way he described it, or the way the report describes it. It kind of reminded me of that movie, Jordan Peele movie, Nope. If anyone's seen that movie, the way the craft is shown in the movie, it's almost like an animal. It just kind of like comes like swoops right in, and it's suddenly there. And it's very ominous the way it's depicted in the film, and that's kind of what I had in my mind when I was reading this report. It was September 14, 1952. The location, Belle, Glade, Florida, directly west of West Palm Beach on the south shore of Lake Okeechobee. Mr. Fred J. Brown, an employee of the Everglades Experimental Station, had awoken at 4:30 a.m., his regular schedule, to feed the dozen cows which resided on the property. As he worked to get the food ready, he suddenly took notice of a very strange humming sound outside, which he likened to high-voltage power lines. He thought this to be highly unusual. What could be making that sound, he wondered. He walked to the barn door and peered out. While he could not see what might be causing the noise, he did notice that the cows and the few horses they had, instead of crowding near the door to be fed as was their routine, they had fled to the far side of the pasture as if frightened by something. Brown wanted to figure out what was disturbing the animals, so he stepped outside and looked around. It was still quite dark that early in the morning, but he could see nothing unusual. Then he looked up. That's when he saw it, the source of the strange humming sound. Up in the sky, slowly descending, Brown observed a round object that he guessed to be about 35 feet in diameter. He immediately knew that what he was looking at was not a balloon. The saucer-shaped object appeared metallic and had red and yellow lights, alternately spaced, in a row around the rim on the underside. Due to its angle, Brown never got a good look at the top of the craft, but he did note that there did not appear to be any windows or other such openings. To him, it almost looked like a blimp, but it lacked motor, propellers, or doors. It very much puzzled him. The object came down in an apparent controlled descent, only stopping when it reached a point about 40 feet from the ground, almost directly over the barn. According to Brown, the object came to within 20 feet of the treetops in the vicinity of where he stood. The saucer, or whatever, Brown was at a loss on what to call it, did not hover when it halted its soft fall. It seemed to move horizontally away from him, and was quickly lost from view behind the trees in the back of the barn. The sight unnerved Brown so much that he immediately regained his composure and began the task of herding the cows and horses back to the barn. He was hoping to feed them and milk them and get it over with in case that thing came back. He didn't get very far as the object returned, passing north to south at about 30 miles per hour in a slight climb, bathing the barn and pasture in a strong light, and leaving behind an acrid odor. This was too much for the animals, who ran off for the second time. Brown, overcome with fear and wanting another witness, took off running towards some houses nearby. Before he got to them, however, he noticed that the object had again departed. He had no idea where it was. He slowly walked back to the pasture and looked around, but saw nothing. He decided to try and round up the animals again to get his chores done. He was very nervous and continued to look around, waiting for it to reappear, but it never did. He noted that the barn and everything around it, including the animals, took on a strong acid, ammonia-like odor. It burned his eyes and nose. While the object never returned, Brown's troubles were not over. The milk production from the cows dropped from the usual 25 gallons to a mere 5 to 6 gallons. That afternoon production was still down, but not by as much. When Brown talked to the press, he noted that it wasn't unusual for him to be up that early. as that was when he typically started his feeding and milking routine. He told the reporter that he wasn't afraid of anything natural, and that what he saw that day was not natural. It sounds like this object, whatever it was, that flew over this farm, it sounds like it dropped something on the area, and that's why everything had this kind of, terrible odor. That's why his eyes burned and stuff. But I don't know what would cause the animals to produce less milk. What would cause the cattle to produce less milk? I know that stress can, hinder a cow's ability to produce milk, but I don't know if it's stress in this case. I wonder if it was sanitizing the cattle's milk before it took it, but like I said, I don't know, it's strange. And it doesn't land at any point. He doesn't say it landed at any point. So, unless, and that's the only thing I can think of, is that maybe it was there before he went out there. Maybe it was already, out there, and he just sort of came out at the tail end of it. And maybe that's why the craft came back, because it was checking to see if he was still there. It was Friday, May 15, 2009. Kendall Davis, a pseudonym, and his friend were driving on Highway 37 to his cottage, which was located near Tweed in Ontario, Canada. They had been looking forward to the weekend away. It was around dusk and they were chatting and laughing. As they passed a hydroelectricity tower, they suddenly caught sight of something that alarmed them. An object was there hovering about a quarter of a mile away. What was weird is that the object seemed to, quote, decloak itself, like it had materialized from nothing into a solid object. That was the best way they could describe it. Davis immediately began slowing down, wanting to better see the object, which appeared disc-shaped. It remained still next to the tower briefly and then slowly drifted over to another tower, where it paused again. Davis and his friend noted that it, quote, looked like it was somehow absorbing power. As Davis and the passenger watched, the object flew over the treetops about 50 feet above them in a perfect straight line. Then it did something that neither of them expected. It veered over their SUV, coming right up on them in seconds. The object changed colors from bright orange to a solid purple, quote, like it was regenerating or something. Davis slammed on the brakes, slowing to 60 kilometers an hour. The disc then maneuvered down to their location, hovering slightly ahead and in front of them. It was at this point they observed something seated inside, staring back at them, a creature. They noted that it resembled the typical large-eyed being so prominent in popular culture. It seemed to be seated behind some kind of console and was operating two stick-like levers, pulling them up and down and touching what appeared to be buttons. As soon as the two people and the creature locked eyes, the object seemed to level out, and a massive grid of lights shone down on them. Suddenly there was a series of flashing lights. Davis likened it to Morse code, and he began to wonder if it was attempting to communicate with them. Sadly, neither Davis nor his passenger understood Morse code, so they could offer no assistance. The two friends could only ignore the flashing lights. Davis then demanded that his friend get her phone out and take a picture. This friend, possibly due to fear, flat out refused, noting that they, quote, wouldn't come out anyways. After a few minutes of them ignoring the lights, the object and its pilot veered away to the southwest. As it moved, it seemed to turn orange and speed up, eventually vanishing out of sight. Davis claims that he put in a report with the Belle, Ontario Police Department. A few months ago, probably like in the summertime I think it was, I had made a video where I just talked about how I'd had a sighting of something strange, and this case interested me because I saw when I saw this thing that looked like a water tower over some trees. It was in Thomasburg, which is just like a 5-minute drive, 10-minute drive from Thomasburg to Tweed, not even. So I was on my way to a park called Vanderwater, and I used to hike up there all the time. It's a 3-hour hike. You know, if you go even further back, it's longer, but you're getting into some. It gets a little hard to walk the further you go back. It's not as the trails aren't as kept up, but so I was on my way to Vanderwater, and that was when me and my friend had this sighting of this, or at least I had a sighting of it. He didn't see it, but I'd come around a corner, and I'd seen this thing sitting there above some trees near where this bridge is, and I had seen it, and I remember saying something like, that doesn't look plastic, or that doesn't look plastic, or something like that. And then I remember thinking afterwards, like, why did I say that? And it was just really strange. And as we got up to it, like, I don't even remember what happened. I just remember kind of like driving up to it. I remember there was a car behind me. I don't remember anything else about, my friend. I said to my friend, he kind of looked up, and he was looking at his laptop. So he kind of looked up, and he didn't see anything. And I didn't see anything in the rear view either when I looked, so it was, I don't know. I'm not saying I was taken or anything like that. It's just I didn't see it as I got up to it. It was just like I saw it when I came around the corner, but as I was, driving in its direction and got up to it, I don't remember seeing it take off. It's just like it wasn't there anymore. I don't know. It's a little weird. But yeah, it happened like 5 minutes from this happened. My sighting happened 5 minutes from Tweed, so I found this case particularly interesting.